Joe. I saw you today, I think.
Yeah, I might join just for a few minutes. I have to go, but I wanted to check this place. I was impacted by our conversation, so yeah, hi.
All right. Well, um, Amrit has a sort of an issue to talk about that's worth mentioning, and Dietrich is backing it up by saying that in our society, in our Western society, we're basically taught that life is a struggle, life is hard, there's a lot that needs to be done. And that's a mindset that has gotten set in, and it's actually exploitive. That in fact I can think of that there's many places and many times when that mindset has been set in place. An example would be in the Middle Ages during the feudal times when you had, let us say, armies that took over a great swath of land and built a castle, and then anybody within army marching distance was serfs, people who were on the king's or the nobleman's land. And about once a year, the nobleman would send out all of his troops to go steal all of the groceries and all of the crops that were grown all year long, which means that the serfs had to scramble to hide as much stuff as they could to keep it from being taken away from them. And so the nobleman, he has to maintain the castle, he has to maintain his army, and so he's under pressure to perform. And then all the serfs are under pressure to grow as much crops as they can because most of it's going to be taken away, and they're under pressure to hide it. And so humans have been doing this to each other for many, many centuries, and it's formed kind of a mind state. Well, hello, Michael. Glad to see you.
Hello, how you doing?
All right. So we have wound up then with this mind state of scarcity, and it is reinforced from time to time under circumstances of famine. And we've also gone into and quite along through the what we call the Industrial Revolution, where you'll have industrialists and bosses and managers who seem to think that they can make a profit off of employees, that we can put all these people to work in our factory making cotton garments or whatever. And the more I can make those people work, the more money I get. And then the ignorance is that the more money I get, the better off I am. No, now that I'm greedy for more money, I'm under pressure to put more people to work, to build a bigger factory. And then all of the guys who's working in the factory, they go home and they've got kids there. And right from the very beginning, the whole point was is that we want to have children so that we can exploit them, to make them work for us. And that in modern times, how that operates is, and this happened very much with me, is that Daddy was not successful at what he wanted to do, and so he wants Junior to be successful doing that. Now, in the old days, it had the idea they had the idea that the kid was going to work in the family business. The carpenter had a son who was a carpenter. The plumber had a son who would be a plumber. This is very common still in much of the world, especially in places like India. And so, with myself, my dad was a musician. He was in an army band during World War II. And so he made sure that I was a musician. He started me off with a trumpet, then he gave me a baritone, and the next thing I know, I'm carrying around a tuba. Why was I carrying around a tuba? Because my dad wanted me to carry around a tuba, and it wasn't until my mid-20s for me to figure out that I'm carrying this tuba because my daddy wants me to carry it, and it's not because I want to carry it. Well, I would assume, Amit, that your life is the same way, that you're doing things because you're supposed to do them, because you were told that you've got to do it, that the family's going to be better off, the bosses are going to be better off, the industrialists are going to be better off, the whole country's going to be better off, and so you do what you're told to do, and you don't like it. Did that ever happen to you, Dietrich? You're still muted.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, in a different way. It was really like my parents really wanted me to go to university. We got to get graduation.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually wanted to become a musician. So I had to struggle out of that. And but the point I was making is like there is this, my parents sort of brought me up like you have to really work hard and it has to be stressed and it has to be a lot of energy, otherwise it's not worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it in practicing, I see now in practicing the Dhamma, in meditating, that it's really like, it can't be this easy. It has to be hard. I have to work harder or something. I have to do something. I have to get into action, because just sitting and just watching my breath, it can be. It's some like, it's so ingrained, so indoctrinated that it has to be hard.
Yes. You were told that it had to be hard by people who were told that it had to be hard, who were told by people that it had to be hard. And it goes way, way back. That in fact, there's an interesting passage somewhere in the Bible, I've forgotten exactly where, but it goes something like this, that the sins of the father are visited upon the sons for 7 generations. I think that was quite conservative. I think some of this stuff goes back 70 generations, sometimes further than that. If we plan on 5 generations in a century, then it can go back that far, because a lot of the stuff that we're living in now was entrenched by the time of the Middle Ages. Some of it was entrenched even before that. An example of that would be the caste system in India, to where the Brahmins got to be Brahmins, and the army class, the nobles, they got to do it, and the merchants, they got to do their thing, and the Sudras have to work really hard to maintain the other 3 so that they can do what they're supposed to do, and everybody is stuck in this system we call society. Michael Michener, how about you? Do you understand? Do you have a feeling for this from your own background and upbringing? That you live your life because it was planned for you, and you were told all about it from childhood.
It's hard for me to say. I don't feel like I had a lot of structure growing up. And my dad was an elevator mechanic. And
did he work hard?
He worked hard, yeah.
Well, he was giving you an example too.
Yeah.
He showed you how to do it.
He more so instilled like a love of camping in me, I guess you can say. Yeah, I don't think he really wanted me to like have a hard, stressful job like he did. And also he was very emotionally reactive. So the only time I ever saw him happy was when he was in the mountains. So that made me love nature a lot. Just I saw that, oh, this is where my dad's happy. So this is where happiness is. And so all I really wanted growing up was to go live in the mountains. And but then I fell in love at 16, so then I didn't go live in the mountains. But then we went to Thailand together and found Wat Suan Mokkh, so that ended up really well there too.
All right. How about you, Michael? Mark Clark.
You've got to work to eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one. You've got duties. You've got responsibilities. You've got to do what you're told to do. Martin, how about you? Do you have such a background?
Oh yeah, sure. And what is kind of crazy is that even when you see that in fact you're doing things because other people told you to do, when you don't do them, sometimes you have that feeling of guilt, you know. And what I find crazy is that it's for big things like a job and our life, but it's also for the small thing. For example, I want to eat something, but I have a voice in my head that says, no, you shouldn't eat that. You see, so even for the small thing, you've got those rules that are ingrained in your brain. So you have to see them too, even the small thing.
Mm-hmm. So, Amrit, looks like everybody's got it.
Yes.
How about you?
Yeah, same story. And also, when I start practicing meditation, I start first with the Goenka's retreat, and I learned the exactly same stuff, that if I have to succeed in meditation, I really need to work hard. I need to sit for long hours. I should endure the pain. So it was. And actually, at that time it seems to me kind of very natural, because everything is like that. If you want to succeed in studies, you have to work hard. And why should it not be same for meditation?
You're exactly right, and thanks for bringing that up. So, that mindset that's so strongly built into society, especially Western society, each individual one of us will bring that mentality with us to the Dhamma. That in fact, whatever Dhamma we got, instead of let us say the Dhamma coming in and infiltrating and taking over the mindset, what happens instead is we bring our mindset to the Dhamma, and it takes over our understanding of the Dhamma. And that leads us into strong determination practices. It takes us into austerities. It takes us into heavy duty weightlifting. That in fact, a fairly good analogy is going to the gym. And most people, when they come first to the gym, they want to show off. The newbie on the kid on the block, he wants to go and curl 100 kilos or something like that, well beyond his means. To where the right way to get started is to do something really simple, like a 1 or 2 kilogram dumbbell, and you just keep propping it over and over and over again with the reps. And this is what helps build up the muscle. Okay? And this is exactly the way that we can start to practice the Dhamma, is to first off recognize that it's easy. And then the second point is that it has to be repeated over and over and over and over again. It's easy to do, but we got to keep doing it. And one of the reasons for that is because we have been so ingrained and indoctrinated into life is tough, life is hard, you got to work to eat, and all of that mentality. How much of that have we been practicing? How many times have we thought about getting up in the morning and going to the work because I have to do it? Not because I enjoy, not because I want to get up and go play on the computer and get paid for it at work. I don't want to go to work, but I will because I need to. I have to. It's part of the program. All right. So over and over and over again, we have kept repeating that stuff, and it's ground us into a habit or into a kind of a rut. And this is how we live our life, is according to those ruts. And the rut is fairly easy to get out of, and then we get right back into it. And then it's easy to get out of again, and then we get right back into that rut again. And so we have to practice getting out of that rut and practice more and more staying out of that rut. In fact, this concept that we're talking about is, let us say, spread into many places in the suttas. And one of the places is in the definition of first jhana of applied and sustained thought. We have to apply the mind to getting out of that rut. And then we have to sustain the mind to keep it out of those old ruts. Guess what? If we don't get back in those old ruts, the rain and nature and whatever will start to fill in the ruts. In the human brain, old neurons will die off and new neurons will form. But we have to practice the new neurons. If we keep practicing the old neurons, the old habits, we'll just keep those ruts going. We'll keep those neuron pathways strong. So we have to do it over and over again. This is the repetition part. And this is how we can get out of it. There is a cure for the spiritual disease, but we have to keep applying that cure over and over and over and over again. You've probably heard from the Mary Poppins movie that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Well, what that means is that we can't use 1 teaspoon of sugar to help this medicine go down, and now we got to take the medicine forever without the sugar. Oh, no, we have to keep putting the sugar on it over and over and over and over again to make it repetition. Hello, Brett. Wow, I'm glad to see you.
Thank you. Glad to see you guys too.
Thank you for sending the laptop. It is here. We haven't put our operating system on it yet, but wow, did you send us a fortress? I've never seen a laptop that looked like a tank.
Yeah.
All it needs is a turret.
Yeah, thank you, Brett.
You could have tea on it. It's versatile. Anything you want to do, you can take it.
You can tie it to a stick and use it for an axe.
Yeah, you could use it as a boat anchor.
So anyway, glad that you joined us. We were talking about that the Dhamma is actually quite simple, but it has to be practiced over and over again. If you notice this Dhamma talk, I'm talking about just one simple little thing, but I keep talking about it over and over and over and over again. This is what a good Dhamma talk is. It's just doing the same thing over and over and over again. There's another example, and that would be a hypnotic induction. A hypnotic induction is doing just simple little talking, and you just keep talking the same thing over and over and over again. That in fact, in the Goenka method of body scanning, it's the same thing over and over and over again. Start at the top of the head and then start moving around and start feeling the sensations that are here, and then you keep moving down and down, and you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, applying it to different places and parts of the body. So this is an ordinary concept. Children learn to play sports, not because they were brilliant from the first time, but that they practiced over and over and over again. Musicians don't become musicians because they can play for the first time. We have to keep practicing it over and over and over again. That's a part of life. Now, here's the big point, is that most people think that real success is getting something big done. And the reality is the only thing that's ever big that's done is because a whole lot of little things were done, making a great big pile of stuff that was done. That there's really no reason to do great big things. An example of that is that they delivered a big pallet of cement bags, 100-pound bags of cement. They delivered them to the wrong place. And instead of delivering to this part of the side of the work site, they should have been delivered over there. Now, the point is that now we don't have any heavy equipment that can move a big pallet of cement bags. How can we move them? How would we
One
move
bag
them
at a
over
time.
there, Michael?
One bag at a time.
One bag at a time, exactly. We keep repeating it over and over and over again, moving one bag at a time, and that's how we would move the whole pallet. So, this is the real point about the Dhamma, and that many people then will start practicing and have no success. That in fact it's quite common the way, because we're supposed to work really hard at it. If you're going to get anything out of it, you really got to struggle. And people start that way, and then they're getting no value out of it. And so they redouble their effort, and they really put it in. And they start sitting for long periods of time. Why? Because they desperately want something, and they're not getting any success out of it. And they keep practicing the same thing over and over again, but they wind up in more stress. That in fact, there is a sutta, number 22 in the Majjhima Nikaya. I'm sure that several of you know it, and it's known as the simile of the snake. And the Buddha talks about catching the snake, and he actually talks about taking the stick that's got a small fork at one end of it, and that you take that stake and you put it down to the head of the snake, and then you can pick the snake up by the head.
Instead of the tail.
And then you can hold that snake by the head. And if you pick up a snake by someplace in the middle of the snake, it's going to turn around and bite you. Right? So grabbing a snake can be very dangerous. And in fact, there have been several, I've seen them on YouTube, in fact, that this guy picked up this snake and he was holding it out how proud he was. And while he was holding that snake, it bit him right in the face and he died right on the screen.
Jesus. Dark web stuff.
Yeah, really strange stuff, because people are proud of what they're doing. It's a very hard thing to do. But in fact, if you pick up the Dhamma by the wrong end, it will bite you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens with most Westerners. They get bitten by the snake of the Dhamma because they're picking it up from the wrong end. What wrong end do they pick it up on? They pick it up on the hard end. They pick it up by the tail. They pick it up by the strong part. Where in fact we really need to take the Dhamma by the head. And if you pick it up by the head, pick it up correctly, then it will be of great benefit to you. It'd be of great value. And this is why we keep talking about it over and over again and practicing it at all. The snake up again and again and again by the right place. Because if you pick it up, the Dhamma in the wrong place, like, oh, I got to go sit. Oh, I got to go do a retreat. Back. Or the other part of the wrong snake, getting by the tail, is going off and guess what happened to me in meditation? I saw my past lives, at least a couple of them, and now we want to go back and have that experience again, and we don't have it again. So we're looking for things. Another way of picking up the Dhamma by the wrong end is by wanting to gain power from it. Now, why would anybody want to have magical powers from the Dhamma? Is because they feel weak and insecure, and they need the power of the Dhamma because they don't have the power within their own mind. But if you pick up the Dhamma by the right end and develop it correctly, then the heart will become strong. And when the heart becomes strong, then you can, let us say, do without those kind of magical spiritual powers. The spiritual power that you have is the power of confidence, the power of, I can handle the situation. I don't need to fly through the air or throw sparks or throw lightning or do things that other people are in awe of or perhaps are harmed by, but rather I can just have a smile. That's the real power, the power of being in a good state of mind, no matter what happens. Well, how do we gain a good state of mind regardless of what happens? Is we go away into seclusion, sit down, Go to the forest, go to a foot of a tree, go to an empty hut, go to a pile of straw, and sit down where there's nothing really happening, and then bring mindfulness to the fore and start watching the fact that, boy, is there a lot of stuff happening. The mind goes, na, 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 always grinding right through a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be done. In fact, there is the story of the refrigerator door. There the guy is sitting. He's practicing the Mahasi method, and he sits down on the floor in his cross-legged position, and he starts to grind through his meditation, noting, I note this, and I note that, and I note this. And then all of a sudden, he says, I'm noting that I've got the refrigerator door open. Now, how did he get out of his posture all across the house in front of the refrigerator, get the door open, and he didn't even know that that's what he was doing because he was too busy noting.
He forgot to note tanha.
He forgot to note that he wanted something out of the refrigerator, precisely. Okay, so what we can do instead is start noticing actually what's in the mind in order to change it. So if he notes that tanha, he can say, I'm okay right now. I don't have to go to the refrigerator to be happy. I can be happy right here, right now. And so this is the time to practice, and the time that's best to practice is when the weights are very, very small. Just like you would go to the gym and start with a 1 kilogram dumbbell, and you do the reps over and over and over again. What we do then with practice in Anapanasati is we go to a place that's quiet and nothing there is happening, and we start watching what's left of happening. We get away from it all, we get away from the world, and go sit down to find out that we brought the world with us. And now we have to really get away from the world. We really have to get into seclusion mentally by getting all of the worlds and all the problems and all the stuff out of the mind. And we have to do this with right effort, to take the effort, to put all of that stuff, put all the problems out. No problems right now, no worries right now. Everything is okay right now. We start recognizing the reality is that we're safe. If the reality is that we're safe because we're in seclusion, why is it that fear comes up? Because the reality is that we're safe. The answer is because we've brought the dangerous things with us. And so we can say, put those aside also. We got secluded in reality from dangerous things. Let's get secluded from dangerous things inside the mind and come back to a state of comfort. That's the way to find comfort, DG, is to say over and over again, I'm comfortable right now. If the body is actually uncomfortable, let's get it into a state of comfort. But in fact, that's the whole point about the old Asian sitting postures. You've seen the Buddha Rupas, you've seen the sitting postures, and so all the Westerners will try to duplicate that posture. And guess what? It's not comfortable. Not for long. And so we should only practice those postures as long as they're comfortable. But when they become uncomfortable, then we hear the meditation teacher in our head saying, oh, you're supposed to sit still for a long period of time. And so we wind up sitting in discomfort, just like the old ways of doing things, just like we were back in feudal times when we're worried about the king coming and taking the crops. Only now it's the meditation teacher is going to fuss at us because we're not sitting correctly. All right? So it's the same thing. We bring our troubles with us. And we have to see those things and then put them down, put them aside, and come back to the point of, wow, everything really is okay. Everything is fine right now. Yeah, I'm not sitting in the posture that I saw on TV, but that's okay. I'm sitting in a comfortable posture. And if I can stay comfortable, that's the way to go, to apply comfort and to stay comfortable. Because what are you going to gain by sitting in the lotus posture? You're going to impress people? You've seen probably on the YouTube all of these people doing yoga postures. And sometimes they can stretch their legs almost straight up, or maybe do what they call the splits and all of that kind of stuff. And these girls are really proud of being able to do that. Are you impressed, Michael?
If it makes them happy, I suppose.
Well, right, but you've seen enough of people who can do that, so I can't do it, but I'm still happy without doing the splits. I'm okay.
It always depends on the intention and the motivation.
It always does, doesn't it? And so this is why we need to start investigating our intentions and our motivations, because almost always our intentions and our motivations give us trouble, give us problems, give us dissatisfaction. So we have to start to change our intentions and our motivations to be something that's more wholesome. So our intentions and our motivations are going to now become, is everything okay? Squats or no squats, I'm okay. Another one would be, look at all of the knowledge that people have. Look how many books that are out published. I mean, just in publication now. Never mind all the tomes from years ago that you have to go to a big fancy library and go to the racks in the basement to go find all of these old books. And the scholars will go down there. Oh, they want knowledge. They want more knowledge. They read more books. They learn new languages and all of that. Why? Are they going to be any more happy because they can speak 9 languages? Or are they going to, or just they do that because it impresses people?
The way to knowledge is exit only.
What was that, Brett?
The way to true knowledge could be exit only.
Yes,
In other
that's
words,
right.
Exit the kind of search you're looking for, or that you're referring to, that they're looking for, and because there is no true facts there.
Right. That in fact that's part of the definition of real wisdom. What is real wisdom? The real wisdom is that I know enough. I don't know hardly anything, but I know enough. The amount of knowledge that's out there is vast. There's huge amounts of knowledge, and I want it all.
And it's expanding. It's not going to stop.
And it's expanding faster than any one human being can receive it. Knowledge is growing faster than one person's ability to learn it all. And not only that, but the thing that I find really funny is oftentimes the whole of a science will go down a rabbit hole, learning more and more and more and more, and then all of a sudden everybody's wrong.
Absolutely. All the time. It's subject to anicca.
That happens in psychology. I mean, at one time, everybody was in love with Sigmund Freud. And all of his students were put on great big pillars, like Atkins and Jung and Reich and Byrne, all of these guys. But by the 1970s, they found a little hole here and there in Freud, and all of a sudden he became taboo. Freud became taboo while I was studying Freud. Guess what? Freud's not such a monster after all. So he's gone up and down and up and down according to general knowledge of psychology. And guess what? With all the people who have learned all the psychology, how many of them are actually happy now? In fact, most of the psychologists are psychologists now because they were clients when they were children.
Bingo.
And they wanted more and more and more psychology, and they wound up being psychologists, still trying to get the answer to life. Guess what? We're doing that again in Buddhism. I was just talking to Steve James, the Guru Viking, yesterday, and he was talking about teacher training. That when people get a little bit of Dhamma, they get some knowledge of the Dhamma, they start practicing the Dhamma, the first thing they think about is, oh, I want to be a Dhamma teacher. And not only that, but the Dhamma teachers who are teaching Dhamma, they say, oh, well, I'm making some money at teaching Dhamma, but I'm going to start a teacher training program, and then I can really make some money off of these idiots I call students.
You know,
And off we go. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I was going to say that I've been rereading the Majjhima Nikaya, and just realizing that pretty much every single sutta is the exact same teaching, just delivered in a different way. And that the Buddha basically identifies the reason why everybody is not figuring it out. And like I thought of a metaphor for it. So if you were to think of the Dhamma as you have to drive a big rig from Los Angeles to New York, but you're completely drunk, completely hammered. And every time you get in the big rig and you start driving, you crash it. And you get in, you drive it again, you crash it. Get in, drive it again, you crash it. Well, the Buddha's telling you actually you can't drive the big rig anywhere until you stop drinking, wait till you're sober, and then you can get in the big rig and drive it.
Or better still, learn to drive a tricycle first.
The
maybe
point is that you have
to a bicycle, and then maybe to a motor scooter, and pretty soon, eventually, you'll be able to get on the big rig. Then, in fact, a lot of the big rig drivers are not drunk on alcohol; they're drunk on power.
Well, the point of the analogy is that everybody is drunk on sensuality, and you know you have to take the log out of the bog and let it dry up before you can do anything at all. You can't have any clarity of vision or insight, or you can't do any practices at all until you've sufficiently dried yourself out of sensuality, because craving intoxicates the mind, and the mind can't see clearly.
Mm-hmm. Well, by the way, to dry it out is by putting sunlight on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
The sunlight, okay, the knowledge, and I'm not talking about the knowledge in a great big general thing. I'm talking about the knowledge that we gain by investigating right here, right now.
Sati,
exactly. To remember to look and then to make a change. That's the way to dry out, is by looking, investigating, and then making a change. The way to get those ruts to fill in, cover over, have some grass, the dried mud will clake and then break and fall in, and those ruts will fill in only when we stop creating that rut deeper and deeper. We got to get out of the rut, and then it will heal. There's an old joke about that the guy has an elbow problem, and he goes to the doctor. And he says, "Doctor, my elbow hurts from time to time." And he says, "Oh, well, what do you do to that causes your elbow to hurt?" And he says, "Oh, I do this with it." And the doctor says, "Oh, well, if you want to heal your elbow, stop doing that."
Yeah. You have a bleeding rash and you're still scratching it. It's never
right. You got a bleeding rash. You got to stop scratching it. That's the sensuality. I want that pain to go away, and so I'm trying to scratch it away, and all I'm doing is making things worse. Mm-hmm. And so this is where we have to do it. That's how we dry things out, is by remembering to take the right effort to abstain from scratching, to abstain from yelling at people when they're yelling at you, to abstain from yelling at ourselves when we're yelling at ourselves, and start to change that from being critical of ourselves. And in fact, that's part of the sensuality that you're talking about, Michael, is that we actually we want things to be better so bad that we're harming ourselves to make them better. And in fact, the harm that we're creating ourselves out of our desire is the first thing that we have to stop. And then over time, those ruts will fill in. Over time, if we keep being in the present moment, then those desires for sensuality will eventually fade away. but we have to keep doing it. It's like the log in the bog. By the way, Dietrich, there's a story it's in the Sutta number 36 where the Buddha talks about a water-logged log that's in the swamp, and it can't be set on fire. Even in the time of the Buddha, they had professional fire makers. Nowadays, everybody's a professional fire maker. All you need is a lighter or a blowtorch or something like that. But in the old days, the professional fire makers, they had to rub sticks together and whatnot. And the point is that if a log is waterlogged, it can't be set on fire. So you have to drag the log out of the bog. That's the seclusion. But you have to leave the log out of the bog on the shore so that the sunlight can shine down on it and the gravity can pull the water downwards, and then the log can be set on fire. So we have to leave the log out of the bog. And if we find our log back in the bog, we have to keep dragging it out again, over and over and over. We have to repeat dragging the log out of the bog, and pretty soon it'll stay out longer and longer, and then it will start to dry out.
Perhaps drag it further away.
Right, drag it. Well, that's the Western mentality. The sunlight is only 3 or 4 meters from the shore. You don't have to drag it 90 miles, because all of that work of dragging it 90 miles, and all of a sudden the log's back in the bog again.
Well, the only reason that you would need to drag it further away is if you're so forgetful, you keep throwing it back in.
Yeah,
so it's your
right.
own stupidity
Guess who
that
throws it back
dragging
in?
it away from.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly. Yes.
So about the sensuality, that confuses me a bit, because, to be comfortable, like say, for instance, we all got to eat, and I like to eat really well, and that's really like a joy to the senses.
Mm-hmm.
So is it like, it feels like sensuality in this feels like a bad thing, something like that?
It is when it gets in the way. For instance, the guy who, let us say, an average Joe at an average job, really is, he enjoys very expensive food, and he's got a list of restaurants in the city, and they're all very expensive. And now he's in great debt simply because he likes to eat. And so we can actually work with that by becoming satisfied with the kind of food that we have. Going back to the Majjhima Nikaya, there's the Sutra number 2, the Sabha Asava Sutta, where after it talks about what we're talking about today, of the knowledge to keep looking, keep investigating, then we can start to apply what they call the elimination of the asava or the kilesa by doing. The first one is by knowledge, and now we're talking about doing. How can we get over our addictions to sensuality when we are by nature forced to continue to do that? Okay, we got to have housing. We got to have clothing because of our society. I mean, the old joke is that the Catholic monk got defrocked because he went around that way. Defrocked.
I get it.
No, you didn't get it. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. He wouldn't wear the robe, and so they took the robe away from him.
He's naked.
Right, run around naked. All right, but in our society, there's a certain amount of clothing that's necessary. Okay, but just enough. For instance, old clothes. Most people have and go buy new clothes and then throw their old clothes away or give them to Goodwill or hand-me-downs, where in fact the old clothes are good enough. that actually, to be honest with you, every shirt in my closet right now are 15 years old. I think with a couple of exceptions, of a couple of them are about 10 years old. But they're good enough. Part of the reason why they keep okay is because I don't wear them very often. In fact, some of the shirts that I've got in my closet haven't been worn for 15 years. All right. So we're talking about now the 4 requisites, the 4 requirements, the 4 things that we can learn to abandon by using them. And that would be adequate housing, adequate food, adequate clothing, and adequate medical care. That in fact, many countries now have big problems with an issue they call homelessness. And it's easy for many people who do have houses to say, oh, the homeless are homeless because they're all drug addicts. Well, what is a drug addict? A drug addict is somebody who is still attached to sensuality. He wants those drugs. But if we would go for the 4 requisites in the sense of whatever housing we've got, that's good enough. We don't have to go get a bigger house and a bigger house. Oh, we've got 5 kids. Okay, well, 3 of them can sleep on the floor in the bedroom. We don't have to go get a 5 or 6 bedroom house because we've got a lot of kids. In the old days, they didn't do that. But in our society, it's always a bigger house. In fact, they talk about it in a funny way about first-time home buyers, right? You've heard about that? They got to make special provision for first-time home buyers. Guess what? We only need to buy a house one time, and after that, we should learn our lesson about buying houses and stop doing it. You've heard this, the expression of fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Okay, so people keep buying property and buying, and that's what's causing the housing crisis, is because of greed and sensuality. And people wind up over their heads. They can't afford a house, where in fact, getting a tiny house, getting just enough that's adequate and staying there and keeping it up, having just enough clothing and keeping the clothing that we've got. If we've got shoes, we've got enough. We don't have to be in Imelda Marcos that has 3,000 pairs of shoes. 1 pair of shoes is enough. And in fact, I don't even know where that pair of shoes, I brought them with me the last time that I came from U.S., which was, I think, maybe 2010, maybe 2008 was the last time I was in the States. I bought a pair of shoes. They're around here someplace, but I haven't worn them since I came to Thailand. But I have a pair of slippers here, but I only wear those when I got to go to town, about, maybe 2 hours a month, and most of the time I go barefoot. That's good enough. Adequate clothing, adequate food, adequate housing, and a big one, adequate medical care. We do need medical care. All of these, by the way, fit into the concept of the middle path. We're not saying to do without. We're saying to do with what we've got and stop wanting more. That's what sensual desire, by the way, is all about. It's often translated wrongly in the sense that it's not sensuality, it's sensuality towards the things we don't have and wanting more. That's what the real issue of sensuality is. That one wife's enough. But why does every man go looking at every woman as if, oh, a new wife? You don't need or want that many wives. Wow, they'll gang up on you and kill you. You better be careful about what you want. Go ahead.
One's enough to finish the job. Quite skillful.
We women can say the same.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
One's
Absolutely.
enough. Uh-huh.
In the mirror.
Can I add something to the point about sensual desire?
Go right ahead.
The Buddha, he talks about, he talks about seeing the danger in sensuality. And, the reason that we kind of defend it is because we don't see the danger in it. But that's the whole point of seclusion. You know, when you go into seclusion, like you said, and you take away all of your vices or all the things that you enjoy, and you see how unable you are to just be content without it. That's the only time you actually experience craving that's underlying is when you kind of put yourself into that situation of like detox. You know, you put yourself away from the things that you normally consume, or through your eyes or ears or your mouth or whatever it is, and then you see how much your mind depends on it. But then it's even more radical than that, because you know, like I said, like every form of sensuality intoxicates the mind, so the mind is in a constant state of disturbance, unable to see clearly. So I mean, from the perspective of jhana, you know, you mentioned people addicted to drugs. You know, it's like a person who might say like, well, what's wrong with heroin? You know, it makes me feel good, I really enjoy it. But somebody who's not on it would look at them and say like, well, you can see that you depend on it and it brings you harm. And there's a simile in the suttas where the Buddha says, like, you know, from the mind of an arahant, when people in the world defend sensuality, it's like when a child is happy playing with feces. Like, you know, that's like it brings them a little bit of gratification, but to the arahant, it kind of looks like why do you enjoy that? You know.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And so, by, let us say, correct practicing, an example of that is that in the old days, when the monks went on bendabat, when they went out gathering alms food, people would put a spoonful of rice, another would put a spoonful of curry, another would put a piece of half-eaten fish, another would put a chicken wing in, and as the monks carried the bowls around, the stuff kind of got mixed together, and the monks got used to it. It was all leftovers kind of anyway. But in modern times in Thailand, the people will put every little morsel in a plastic bag and keep them separate because that's the way that they like it. And so in the Achan Tra tradition, you may know about this, Michael, that Achan Cha, when at Wat Pabong and then later at Wat Pananachat, when the Westerners would come, he would require the Westerners to open the plastic bags of the food, dump it into the bowl, and stir it around. I remember quite well when I was out on bendabat in southern Thailand, when they didn't have plastic bags, that I had to scrape the banana off of the curry off the banana before I could peel it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a way of doing it. Instead of eating your food all separately, is to go ahead and stir it up. It's all the same anyway. It's going to wind up in the stomach the same, and it's really going to wind up when it comes out the other end. It's just all the same. But and that will kind of train us. The other thing would be mindfulness of eating, is to recognize why we're eating, not for entertainment, not for making beautification or other things like that. I remember the sutra, because this is also part of that four requisites, is the food reflection, but only for the nourishment of the body. And then in another sutra someplace, the Buddha talked about that when the monks eat, after they take a morsel and put it into the mouth, then they take their hands out of the bowl and stop playing with the food. Now look what you do when you're at a restaurant or eating at home, that while you've got the food in your mouth, you're still stirring up the next batch. That's the sensuality. The sensuality is playing with food you haven't eaten yet. And so putting the fork, putting the knife, putting the spoon down, putting the hands in the lap, and then chew what you've got in your mouth, paying attention to the food that's in the mouth, mulling it over, extracting the juice, swallowing the juice, pulverizing everything. And then the Buddha talks about it in the sense that you run your tongue around the mouth so that not even one grain of rice is left in the mouth. You completely empty the mouth, and then you take another bite. Now, if you eat this way, it'll take you at least twice as long to eat as it used to. You'll wind up getting full quicker, Most people eat and eat and eat, and then they feel full. This method of eating, you eat, and then you eat, and then you feel full, and then you don't want to finish the rest of it. You've had enough already.
And you'll
The
have a
reason
healthier
we
digestive.
overeat is because of sensual desire. We like the food, we want the food, and so we keep eating the food without even going through the experience of eating the food. We'll even be talking with our mouth full. Go ahead, Brett. I think you had something.
Well, I had something, but I have something else now. And that is that when restlessness and worry arises in the body, eating is then difficult. Then eating becomes as if an enemy, and it's difficult, hard to do.
Right. When we're agitated and worry, we tend to eat fast.
Or not at all.
Well, that's unusual. Mostly the girls and the guys who've lost their lover, they're going to sit on the couch and have sensual entertainment on the television while they're eating bonbons and popcorn and hot dogs and everything, not paying attention to what's really going on inside. And so as we're talking now, one of the ways of dealing with sensuality or sensual desires is mindfulness, to watch what we're doing, to slow things down, to slow our eating down, to slow down the movements of the hands. That when people are agitated, they're agitated right down to the way that they pick up things and hold them. And so part of the practice, in fact, now we're talking about the sutta number 10 in the Majjhima Nikaya called the Satipatthana Sutta, where it talks about reaching, touching, grasping, holding, setting things down with our hands, to start being mindful and watch what our hands are doing. That's especially good when we're eating, to really watch what your hands are doing while you're eating so that you can refrain from playing with your food while you're already eating. That we should be able to prepare a morsel and then put it in the mouth and then leave our hands idle while we're putting all of our mindfulness and attention onto what's actually in the mouth. To mold things over, move them around, find a place for the tooth, crack that nut under these best teeth, and then, do it this way. But most of the time our mouth is full, but our mind is even more full. We're agitated, we're playing with our food, and we're not even mindful of actually eating.
In addition, as we are eating and as we are...
I'm going to head off to bed.
Yeah. It's about time. Why don't you wait just a minute? We're about finished with this. Go ahead, Brett.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Simply, I was just going to point out that there is the experience also when eating of flavors that we don't like being ignored, while other flavors we shuffle around in the mouth and we favor certain tastes and sensuality experiences that we prefer from the food. And then other tastes we might swallow without barely chewing, so we just swallow quickly and actually
gulp it down. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we kind of selectively enjoy and selectively reject, omit some tastes as we're eating if you actually look close.
There's another point about that, Brett, and that is that in our society, you've heard about eat your broccoli and then you can have your dessert. Have you ever heard about that? That's very common in southern U.S. I mean, Oklahoma, they do it nonstop. You got to eat what you don't want to eat before you can eat what you do want to eat. Now, the Buddha would teach you just to mix all of that stuff together and play with it that way. But by doing it that way, what we do is that we tell the children, you've got to suffer through your broccoli before you get your dessert.
Yeah.
You got to suffer your way through it. You can't have what you want. You can't deal with your sensual desire until you put in the hours, the work, the hard times, and so you can have the dessert as a reward.
Yep.
All right. So one of the ways of dealing with that now that we're adults is, okay, broccoli and cheesecake, they're together. A bite of this, a bite of that. Or basically they're in the same bite. Chop up those French fries and mix them with the salad.
Excellent. I think my wife's practice is in line with that.
All right, guys. Well, we've had about enough of this. About as much joy as I can stand for the moment.
Wow.
Does anybody have any last remarks? Amit, how about you? Do you have anything to say?
No, thanks a lot, Dhammarato. It was very interesting. Sorry, my phone fell.
How about you, Michael?
No, I don't have anything else. Oh, other Michael. Okay.
I hope to have some broccoli cheesecake someday.
I'll share it with you.
Okay, wonderful.
Dietrich, did you have fun today?
Really, a lot of fun, and I really liked the roundup. We started out by being hard, and life is hard and comfortable, and now through eating we are back to
Everything is okay.
Everything is okay. So I'm gonna have a really slow lunch now.
Excellent. All right. Brett, do you have any final remarks?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you joined. It's a pleasure when you come on. The same thing with you, Michael. I hope to see both of you more often.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
May you all deal with sensual desire happily, knowing that you can do it in moderation. Everything is middle path.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.